Welcome to the Escape Hatch to Wellness. Today's topic for discussion is breath and the lungs and the importance of both on our bodies. You know, we can live 3 minutes without breath, we can live 3 days without water, and we can live 3 weeks without food. So when it comes down to what is the most important of those three, obviously breath, air, is the most important, because without that, you're not going to be drinking water and you certainly will not be eating food. It's interesting because I think breath, for the most part, is something that we take for granted. We assume we're going to wake up and our lungs are going to work and we're going to breathe. We go to sleep at night. We trust that our bodies are going to do the right thing. Our hearts are going to beat. Our lungs are going to work so that we breathe, and everything else will happen without us having to do anything, right? It's effortless. However, over the years, I have come to appreciate breath in ways that I never thought possible. And funny enough, my husband is a huge fan of breathwork. And when I first met him and he was so into it, I just thought he was a bit nuts and a little bit obsessive with it. But as I have come to teach and to also, through my own practice and changing my breath and then teaching breath work to my students and to my clients, again, I have a deeper appreciation of the importance of breath. And now with COVID being in everyone's mind, breath is even more essential. So that was the inspiration behind today's podcast. Number one, because I happened to watch a doctor, he's a gastroenterologist, I think he is, put a video on YouTube, and I'll put the link in the bottom of the podcast if you want to go check it out. And he actually does a really cool demonstration about what happens with pneumonia, basically with a sponge. The sponge is the lung, and then there's a bowl of water, and how water gets into the lung, what happens to it over time. And why basically with COVID, if you have a compromised immune system to begin with, then obviously you will basically suffocate to death. So in order to avoid that, it is important to breathe. Now, as I've become more interested in breath and sharing more information with my students, with my clients, with the workshops that I teach, in doing a lot of research, I have come across statistics which show that anywhere between 30 to 50% of our population does not know how to breathe properly. Now, I don't know about you, but 30 to 50% of our population does not know how to breathe properly. And I have my own theories as to the whys of it. Number one, I do think that we today live with a tremendous amount of stress, way much more stress than what our grandparents may have had to live with. Grandparents may have lived through World War II, great-grandparents through World War I. So that was a stressful time, but that was only a span of time, whereas with today, we have stress every single day, Monday through Sunday. If it ends in a Y, you've got stress. That's the day of the week, and I mean, that level of stress is what's going to cause you to hold your breath or keep your breath in your upper chest. So I'm going to take you back a little bit in my history so you kind of have an idea of why I have embraced this so much. And it's not because of yoga. It's not because of my husband, but because some things had happened to me years ago. And as a result of my history, the application of breath work on my present has helped me heal history in my body. So my first episode with viral bronchitis was when I was working on an old cruise ship, and we were in South America, and I was in bed for an entire week, and I was too funny. I was responsible for the daily programs, producing those every single day for the guests. They knew what was going to be happening around the ship. But after enough spelling errors, the chief purser came back and said, Yvette, just, go to bed and just get better because we'll figure it out. You're not well. We'll figure this out. So back to bed I went. But because it was viral, the doctor on board couldn't give me anything for it besides just to bed rest and chicken soup. So that was basically what I had. From there, that viral bronchitis would show up sometimes when I was on a ship during a contract, or I was at home one time and ended up with it one winter, one very cold winter in Ohio. And my mom decided that being that it was viral, that the best thing to do was to treat it homeopathically. So one of the things that she did was a chest compress, and it was a mixture of onions and garlic sauteed in olive oil until the onions were clear, and then from there you can actually add cornstarch to it if it's too runny, and a little bit of apple cider vinegar just to make it even more smelly. And you put that in between cloth, obviously a piece of cloth that you plan on throwing away afterwards because there's no way you'll ever get the smell out of it, but that's neither here nor there. So that compress then goes on your chest under a heating element, and it rests there for about 45 minutes, and you should do it on the front and then also on the back for 45 minutes at a time. And one compress will actually last for 24 hours, which is good, so you don't have to make them every single time, but once a day. But it helps to pull the infection out of the lungs, and it actually works. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but I've used it enough over the years that me, my husband, my mom, the kids, so I do know this works. But it is really smelly. Now, so that was my homeopathic treatment. When I was a cruise director, I never had viral bronchitis, which is interesting. I had laryngitis from talking so much, but never viral bronchitis. And it wasn't until years later when I was on a ship and we had Norwalk come on board, and they started blanketing the ship with a chemical that was a mixture of bleach and hydrogen peroxide, and that combination just basically sent me into my lungs shutting down. And I remember my belabored breathing. I was sitting and having dinner with my manager who was sailing with me, and she could hear me breathing across the table. I mean, literally when I was trying to take a deep breath in order to talk, you could hear me trying to struggle to get oxygen into my lungs. So that was the start. The next day I did my show, I did my seminars, and then went to the infirmary, and they gave me a nebulizer. I got shots of steroids. I mean, just anything to open my lungs up so I could breathe. But the thing that really scared the crap out of me was I had gone to bed that night. I felt so bad. And like literally at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I was coughing so hard I could not get any breath into my lungs. And I could not breathe. It scared me to death. I was so frightened because I thought, well, how would I even communicate to anybody if I tried to call for 911 on the ship? How would they know who was on the phone? I could not even comprehend that. But it was enough to frighten me that became my last contract. So as you can see, I have had bronchial issues over the years. So when I eventually met my husband and he was into breathwork, it was not something that I wanted to do because I found that the more breath work that I did, the more I coughed. So I could literally, that fear of almost suffocating to death from in my cabin kept coming back to me every single time I did breath work with him. And so that fear was holding me hostage and keeping me from breathing properly. And so when we started doing more and more breath work, And then we had a team come in and do breathwork sessions with us. And that's when I began to learn how to breathe properly. And if you're listening to this and you're wondering what proper breath is, I want you to think of a baby. And if you're a parent, this will really resonate with you even more so, because you'll immediately understand. When we're born, we are born, most of us are born breathing properly. It is our true nature. And as a parent, when your baby is lying in the crib or lying down and you are sitting and watching your baby and you watch the belly rise and fall as your baby is resting in peace, that is how we should be breathing the same. So in watching the doctor's podcast or his YouTube video yesterday, and as he explained, the size of our lungs are way beyond an average person's comprehension. So our lungs, the size of our lung goes from the clavicle, that little bone that runs between the pit of the throat and the shoulder. That's your clavicle. So, and this is on both sides. So you have your lung sits at the top of it, just under the clavicle. And then from there goes all the way down just outside, like literally into the low back or the lowest lobes of your lungs. So you have a very large area, and that if you're not breathing properly, and for most of us, we keep our breath high in our chest. You know, we're luckily if we even breathe down to the sternum, but for the most part, most of us breathe in the upper chest, and we don't breathe all the way down into the lower lobes. And what I have come to recognize in me is that having the viral bronchitis, the bronchial, the congestion is like glue, and it sticks inside of your lungs, which is why when you have a cold or a flu and it gets into your lungs, that rattling noise is like you're trying to cough the glue out. So with having a lung be so large and then only using part of it, you know, you can understand how limiting that is on, number one, getting oxygen into your bloodstream, but also in keeping the whole body healthy and balanced. So when it comes time for, well, this is my personal belief as to why we don't breathe properly. I mentioned stress earlier, but for women, I think we are also so body conscious. If you think about historically, we wore corsets. I mean, just sucking us all in and up. And then almost genetic, the habit is to breathe only in the top. And then as we become so body conscious because of media, magazines, you know, to be slim, you tend to keep your breath high because you don't want your belly to expand and contract because you might look fat. And it's those poor body images, which again cause far-reaching problems way beyond, you know, the size of our trousers or our shorts. So when it comes time for proper breathing, the idea behind it and the practice behind it is to, as you inhale, is expand the belly, then the chest, and then finishing at the top at the clavicle. And then as you exhale, you begin to exhale from the clavicle, contract the chest, and then pull the navel point back towards the spine. That would be a full inhalation and a full exhalation. And in doing something like this, number one, breathing deeply into the belly is going to expand the belly because you're engaging the diaphragm. So you're actually exercising the stomach. And also if you have lower back issues, because you are breathing properly and you're moving things around inside, it actually helps to alleviate low back pain. So breathing into the belly, expanding the belly, contracting the belly is also helping your digestion. So you're getting better nutrition, you're moving the food through the intestinal tract, so you have a better elimination. And a minor fact is that when you practice proper breath and you are breathing, you have the ability to lose 2.5 pounds a day because you're losing toxins. You're helping your body eliminate the toxins through your breath and through the intestines. So there are so many positive sides of proper breath that it can be mind-blowing to know that people just don't do it. And it's something that's so simple that once you start practicing and you apply the practice daily, start with a couple of minutes, 3 minutes if that's even possible. But it helps to balance the autonomic nervous system, so your parasympathetic increases, which helps to balance out the cortisol levels in the body. I mean, I can go on and on with the benefits of it, but one breath technique that we practiced almost on a daily basis was something called Kapalabhati, and it's a pumping, because you're using your belly to pump the air out of the lungs, and it has a noise that goes with it. But as a person who's had viral bronchitis, the thing that I noticed to be the most significant when I first started practicing Kapalabhati, I coughed a lot. Maybe not in the class while I was doing it, but afterwards. And I was getting goop out. And when I say goop, I believe it was the old congestion that was stuck in my lungs from the viral bronchitis episodes that I'd had when I was younger. And knowing this and seeing the power of the healing potential in my body really was the incentive for wanting to share this with other people. And also, it's one of the reasons why when our hospital with NCH, when I was offered the opportunity to go and teach at the Pulmonary Rehab Center, I really did jump at the chance because, and it's one of the reasons why, even if there's only one person who shows up to class, whether it's 1, whether it's 10, pulmonary patients are people who've had lung issues, cardiovascular issues. And when you can help someone breathe properly again, it is such a sense of gratitude that I can give back something that I learned, something valuable. And if this podcast will help some of you just stop and take a breath, and then take another breath, and then take another breath, it will change so much for your body and your mind. So, in essence, again, we can live 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. The most important of these is the air, because without the air, we are not drinking and we are not eating. So pay close attention to how you are breathing, become aware of it, and then create a shift in your days, a shift that's so profound but so simple. You gotta breathe, so why not do it properly? That's what I ask you, to consider changing your breath. And I'll leave you with this. When you want to change your mind, change your breath. Thank you. Thank you for joining me for the Escape Hatch to Wellness and today's Captain's Table conversation. Stay tuned for more interesting conversations, again with the Escape Hatch to Wellness and Captain's Table conversations here on this channel. Be sure to subscribe.